Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for June 12th through June 18th of 2023. We're almost halfway through the year. This is going to be the last video I do in this hotel room. I'm recording this on Thursday and I'll be leaving Friday. So the next weekly horoscope that you watch will be at my new place. I'm very excited for what the setup is going to look like. So if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video because it supports me. And of course, we have a ton of awesome things going on in the astrology this week. So comment below, let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you're excited about. Let me know what you're not so excited about. And let's go ahead and begin. We're starting Monday off with the moon making a trine to Mars. The moon's just in Aries, so again, emotionally, we're a little bit more ramped up. We're a little bit more charged up. We're feeling a little bit more angsty, wanting to kind of, emotionally involve ourselves into whatever actions that we do. But the moon's going to be trining Mars in Leo. What I like about this is with Mars in Leo is typically more prideful, maybe a little bit more egotistical, maybe a little bit more stubborn, but acting in glory and to really, be witnessed doing. Now, what I like about Mars in Leo is, again, we're doing things with confidence. We're doing things with pride. Maybe we need a little bit of that with Mars being retrograde for so long and then Mars being in Cancer where it's a sign of fall and it wasn't, taking action didn't feel all that good. We maybe felt a little bit secure. But when it comes to fighting and conflict, Mars in Leo is like, a lion roaring. As the moon makes a trine to Mars, there's this emotional connection here with what actions that we're taking or what fight we're fighting. And there's a lot of pride here. And don't get me wrong, there's something to say about, pride being a sin, but there's something else to say about like what is going to make us feel confident, what is going to make us feel, courageous, what is going to make us feel bold. And I think a lot of people really do struggle with confidence, and they might, do things in a sense that, they might do things that really show off their insecurity. And I think Mars in Leo is just a really excellent time to take more courageous action and have that confidence to do that. And I think as the moon trines Mars, there is that, a mind, body, soul connection into what actions that we're taking. So on Monday, it's just the moon making a trine to Mars. It looks really fun. It looks really exciting. And I would say, just kind of go for it on Monday. As we get into Tuesday, the moon is going to be at the very end of Aries and is going to make a square to Pluto. Then the moon will ingress into Taurus. It will conjoin the North Node, and then it will conjoin Jupiter. So this is kind of a lot, not really a lot. The only reason I'm bringing up the moon making a square to Pluto is now back in Capricorn. I think a lot of astrologers and a lot of astrology enthusiasts, mostly astrology enthusiasts, really put this big, heavy sense on Pluto, or this heavy weight on Pluto. And that's not to say Pluto isn't a big deal, but it's only going to be a big deal when it's conjoining your ascendant or your midheaven or like any angle by degree or a personal planet. Pluto going back into a zodiac sign isn't going to be that big of a deal. And why I'm saying that is, as Pluto goes back into Capricorn, it's just going back into a place that it's already been for about 12 years now. So there will feel like this kind of coming back to the past. You can kind of look at it as, all right, if Pluto is transformation, right? Pluto is death, Pluto is rebirth, Pluto is control and power and fear. As it goes back into Capricorn, you got to look at what house it's going into your birth chart, because there's this revisit of those themes related to that house. So for example, if you're a Sagittarius rising and it's in your second house, there's this revisit to how money and personal possessions are influenced by, for you, by fear or by power or by control, and where have you kind of transformed your relationship to money over the past 12 years. So you really want to take a look at that, right? But as the moon makes a square to Pluto, there's this kind of inner fear of taking that action. The moon in Aries is like, I'm ready to do it. Put me in, coach. But it squares Pluto, and Pluto's kind of like, are you going to do it? Are you going to let that fear seep in? And I like to bring this into more of a perspective of like being on stage. If you're a performer of any kind, before you go on stage, right before you go on stage is like the biggest time where your nerves get really riled up and you get really nervous and you get really anxious, and it's kind of exciting, but it's all over the place. That is a sign that you should be doing it. You cannot let feelings override decisions that you want to make. We are, by nature as human beings, very sensitive. We have feelings, but feelings do not last. They change. You can have one feeling about one thing and then, learn something about it the next day and have a completely different feeling about a completely different topic or about that topic. So as the moon makes a square to Pluto, there might be this fear around what action you're taking. And I think a lot of it's because our emotions are so invested into it, right? This is why I like when the moon transits Capricorn, because it's a time where we can kind of take away the emotions in what we're doing. We can kind of be detached emotionally. But the moon in Aries is like, have you ever gotten in a fight or a conflict and you're super charged up about it because it hurts your feelings? And I just think that moon square Pluto is just going to be a really good look at, like, are you going to let the fear override your emotions? Are you going to let the, unknown override your emotions? Are you going to let that impede the actions that you want to take? And I would really advise not to let that happen. You are in control of your mind. You are in control of your emotions. You can override those things with your own sheer willpower. And I think there's a lot more strength. I think there's a lot more power in doing that. So with that, the moon will then ingress into Taurus. The moon is exalted in Taurus, and an exaltation is better than a domicile. So if these are new terms for you, each planet has a domicile, a home. For example, the moon rules over Cancer. So the moon's domicile's in Cancer. It's where it feels at home. It's where it feels the best. And for you, imagine you in your home. You feel the most comfortable there, but you're responsible for it. You're in control of it. And there's probably things that, like, you're like, okay, like, I love my house, but I don't like paying the mortgage on it. I don't like having to take care of the yard work. An exalted placement is getting all of the benefits without any of the responsibilities or downfalls. And so the moon in Taurus is like, imagine your best friend, or you go to some sort of event where there's a picnic and there's food and it's free and you can just indulge in yourself, and it's a very relaxing environment. As the moon goes into Taurus, there is this feeling of security and safety and stability and nourishment, and it feels very good. And I bring this up because that moon square Pluto is going to be like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then the moon goes into Taurus and it's like, that was the right decision. Like, if you do any stage performance ever, which if you've never been on stage before, go to an improv class, do some sort of public speaking class. It will help you in every area of your life. But as the moon goes into Taurus, it's like right when you get on stage, all of those fears go away and you're just in the moment and you feel comfortable, you feel secure. The moon will conjoin Rahu though. The North Node, otherwise known as Rahu, is this intense pulling in a certain direction, right? Since the beginning of 2022, the North Node, or Rahu, has been in Taurus. We've been really pulling towards a sense of security and stability and safety. Like, that's the direction that we want to go into. And as the North Node is just about to leave Taurus, it's now at the very beginning signs of Taurus because the nodes move backwards. Astrology is complicated. But as the moon goes into Taurus and conjoins the North Node, there's this really deep feeling of like, I need security. I need stability. I want more. It's like binge eating for a sense of, to overcome a sense of insecurity. Or like when you're really nervous or things are out of control, it's like you just eat. And that, weight. It's like, for me, I'm all fire and air in my chart. So sometimes eating something can really ground me. But there is a balance to everything and you don't want to overdo it. And I think as the moon conjoins the North Node, you just have to watch out for overdoing it. But it's also going to be like, if you smoke cigarettes, when you get to about that hour mark, you go like, oh, I really want a cigarette. Like, I need a cigarette. That's like the moon conjoining North Node. Like, I need to feel grounded. I need to feel secure. I need to feel stable. But that's what happens on Tuesday. And then the moon's going to conjoin Jupiter right after. Jupiter's about abundance. Jupiter's about hope. Jupiter's about faith. Jupiter's about belief and spirituality. And as the moon conjoins Jupiter, there's the sense of like having faith that those things can occur. There's the sense of like, hey, like now that I feel secure and stable, relish in it. Like, what does it feel like? This is something I tell people when it comes to like manifestation. And you guys know how that I don't really always like that word. But if you want to like manifest something, like it's not just about like, oh, think about it every single day. It's all about feeling. Like everything is vibration, everything is frequency. I don't want you to think of like, oh, like let's say you want love, you want a relationship. Don't just think like, oh, I want a love and relationship. Who's going to be my perfect partner? What you want to do is you want to embrace the feeling of like, what does it feel like to be loved unconditionally? What does it feel like to be secure and stable and trusting in a relationship? What does it feel like to release your inhibitions and feel safe around someone? That's how you manifest anything, is like bringing the feeling to your body, letting the goosebumps hit you. And I say this because as the moon conjoins Jupiter, I want you to connect the dots here and be like, what does it feel like to have the security and the stability? Jupiter is all about belief, learning, spirituality, faith. And as it's in Taurus, we're learning more about the senses. We're learning more about being grounded. We're learning more about like what actually makes us feel secure and stable. And I think as the moon conjoins Jupiter, this is an excellent opportunity to feel that and embrace that and really like download that information. So as we get into Wednesday, the moon is then going to make a sextile to Saturn. It is then going to make a square to Venus and Mars, and then by the end of the day, conjoin Uranus. So this isn't the craziest moon action, but the moon is going to kind of put us in a whirlwind. After the moon leaves its conjunction with Jupiter, it will then make a trine to Saturn, or my bad, a sextile Saturn. So the sextile is it's a harmonious aspect. And again, aspects just show us the relationship between two planets. And a sextile is very just kind of like, in my How to Read Your Birth Chart course, which I have a link below if you want to learn more about your birth chart. If you don't really know anything about astrology and you just want to get a very basic fundamental understanding, my course is the one for you. But a sextile is like an underhand helping up. Like I like to think of a trine as like if someone's on the edge of a cliff, a trine is like grabbing over the edge and like lifting you up, versus a sextile is like when you help an old lady up the stairs. Like you're just kind of assisting her, in case anything kind of happens. And as the moon's in Taurus making a sextile to Saturn, as we feel comfortable, as we're wanting to feel more secure, we're wanting to feel more stable, we're very fixated in our emotions as well. Saturn's in Pisces when it comes to responsibility and maturity, time, growing up. It's in the sign of emotions. It's in the sign of spirituality. This is Pisces, right? And so there's this kind of connecting the dots of like allowing yourself to see, hey, I'm making changes. I'm growing up in some sort of way. I'm being more responsible. This is what responsibility looks like now. And I don't have to be so rigid with how everything is. Like what I love about Saturn in a mutable sign is when it comes to being disciplined, or when it comes to being more mature, or when it comes to just even restrictions, they change. The mutable signs are all about change. Saturn has been in Aquarius for the past 3 years where it's like, nope, these are the limitations, these are the walls, these are the barriers. But if Saturn's in Pisces, that's all up for debate. That's going to go, change like the tides. And I think as the moon makes that sextile to Saturn, there is this like, hey, I'm in the middle of this change. This feels good. And I understand how I can feel secure in the midst of this change that's going on. So I really do like that. Hold on, I have a cat that might want to join the presentation. He is now on the table. Sir, excuse me. The moon will then make a square to both Venus and Mars, though. And this is where it gets tricky. When you have the moon in Taurus, and we're like, fixed signs are very stubborn. We do not like to change. I say we because I'm a Leo. But as the moon's in Taurus and we're feeling very secure and stable, hold on, there might be a cameo of a cat here in a second. As we're wanting to feel more secure and more stable and feel more grounded, it's going to make a square to Venus and Mars in Leo. With Mars and Venus in Leo, Venus is all about, again, love, connection, indulgence, and fun. And she's in Leo. Like, we want to express ourselves. We want to be seen. We want to be witnessed. There he is. Sir, do you want to say hi? Excuse me. Okay. We want to be seen. We want to be witnessed. We want to be glorified. And Mars in Leo is like, I'm ready to take action. But this moon in Taurus is like, I don't want to get out of bed. The moon in Taurus is like, but I'm comfortable right here. And I would talk a lot about this being about getting out of your comfort zone. Like the moon in Taurus is like again, it's like Sunday morning, you're in your bed, you're, scrolling through your phone. There's this sense of being very comfortable. And I think as the moon is squaring Venus in Venus's sign, what we value or what is fun for us is like at a conflict. I bring this up because Venus is going to go retrograde over this summer. How we value things, how we value being seen, how we value being witnessed is going to go under this kind of reconstruction. And we're going to start getting the first signs of it as the moon is in Taurus, and as we have all these Taurus transits, and as we have Venus go into shadow and everything like that. But I just look at the moon making a square to Venus as like, while I feel comfortable here, I understand that I don't value this essentially, and I need to make some changes. And then the moon's going to make a square to Mars, where there's this kind of like, getting out of your comfort zone is not easy. Allowing yourself to be like, okay, this is comfortable for me. I know that being in my comfort zone is not always good for me, and I need to do something about it. That's what's going to be frustrating about Wednesday. Then after the moon makes that square to Mars, and there's this kind of frustrating not being able to figure out like what's the best way to do action. It's like also the moon making a square to Mars is just kind of like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to go do this real quick, or I'm going to do that real quick. Or, maybe there's even a little splash of self-sabotage where it's like, no, I do feel comfortable here and I don't want to change. After that, it's going to be a little frustrating, right? The moon will then conjoin Uranus by the end of the evening. As the moon conjoins Uranus, there's two options you got here. There's a breakdown. There's, instability. There is some sort of thing that kind of gets thrown in your face that you weren't expecting, destabilization. Or there's a breakthrough opportunity for you to just go, you know what? I'm going to try something innovative. I'm going to liberate myself. I'm going to redefine what comfort and security looks like for me, which like when you think about 2020 and you think about COVID, there is this kind of whole rethink of like people's values. And I think it's just the moon conjoins Uranus. There's kind of that revisit to that same idea. Oh, this guy always gets the zoomies when I'm on camera too, by the way. So if you just see him running around, he's just like that. So anyway, as the moon conjoins Uranus, it is time to go. You all right, bud? Whoa. All right, buddy, don't run over here. So as the moon conjoins Uranus, again, there's that opportunity for a breakthrough. There's that opportunity to like allow yourself to redefine what security and stability and value looks like for you, right? Uranus is all about innovation and liberation and freedom, and it's in the sign of Taurus. Like, we have been redefining those things. There have been a lot of breakthroughs in that area. And I just think as the moon conjoins Uranus late on Wednesday, this is a time to do something different. And again, I think redefining something is probably the best way to look at it. Sir, please go away. Sir. No. Don't step on the keyboard. Don't step on the keyboard, please. I know you want to be a YouTube celebrity. Then we get to Thursday, and we actually get to our first highlight of the week. On Thursday, we're going to have the moon make a sextile to Neptune as it's in the end degrees of Taurus. Then the moon is going to ingress into Gemini. And then, of course, our first highlight of the week is Mercury making a square to Saturn. But let's first talk about the moon. The moon's at the end degrees of Taurus. We just come off that conjunction to Uranus, but it's going to make a sextile to Neptune. Neptune is all about illusion and fantasy and deception, but mysticism, and it's a very creative planet for like the creative people out there. If you're like a realist and an analyst, like, you may not like Neptune. But as the moon makes a sextile to Neptune, there is this kind of creative like way to see things. It's like as the moon conjoins Uranus, it's like, let me redefine value. Let me do something different and innovative and liberate myself from an old way of doing things. And as the moon makes a sextile to Neptune, there's this kind of romantic, rosy way that you kind of picture what the future looks like, or picture what situation you're going into. And let me also say this. The moon is waning, and as we get into Thursday, the moon's going to ingress into Gemini, and it's going to be a dark moon where we're getting ready for a new moon. So all of this is kind of building us up for a new reset or a new start. Every 30 days we get a new moon, which is so awesome, because every 30 days you get an opportunity to clean up and clear out an area of your life and to do something different. So of course, look at where Gemini is at in your chart, because that's where things are going to be changing. But then after the moon makes a sextile to Neptune, it's then going to ingress into Gemini, where it's full of ideas. It's full of stimulation. We want to communicate everything, but it's a dark moon. It's kind of like internalizing everything, thinking about all of our ideas and thinking about what we're going to do next. Sorry, I'm distracted by this lovely fellow over here. So studious. The other thing on Thursday is Mercury is going to make a square to Saturn. So Mercury's in Gemini, right? I talked about this last week, I believe. If not, I definitely talked about it on my June monthly overview over on my Patreon. If you want to support the channel, consider going over there. But Mercury's in Gemini, right? We just had Mars retrograde through Gemini. So it caused all of this chaos and the paperwork went everywhere. And then Mars just left. Mercury goes into Gemini, and it's starting to reorganize and like look at the mess and being like, okay, where are these papers? Where's this information? And how can we reorganize it? As Mercury's in Gemini, it's a lot easier to communicate. It's a lot easier to make ideas and have plans. Mercury's in its domicile in Gemini, so it's just easier to communicate, easier to think. It's not Mercury in Taurus where we're just like stubborn and everything's just moving slow. As Mercury's in Gemini, and by the way, it's flying through Gemini, it's going to make a square to Saturn. This is the interesting part. As Saturn's in Pisces, and there's limitations, and there's kind of a structure around, I like to think of Pisces as like, Sagittarius is thinking the destination is the journey, versus Pisces is understanding that the journey is the destination. But as Saturn's there's a block there. So it's like, we might think like, oh, like, well, if I just get to point B, like, then I'm going to be happy. But when you try to go like, well, what is the journey that I'm going through? Like Saturn and Pisces is like, well, that's not for you to know yet. That's when you undergo a big change in your life and you want to do something completely different. You don't know what that journey is going to entail. You don't know what things you're going to go through. You don't know how you're going to change. And I think as Mercury makes a square to Saturn, for one, like typical Mercury Saturn square stuff is like, impeding communication. There's some sort of limits with communication, bad communication with authority figures. So if like you're like a Gemini rising, like not going to be a good conversation with your boss or a superior person. But Mercury squaring Saturn is like, you're not going to get all of the answers that you want just because you're asking the right questions, just because you're, thinking about this really hard. That doesn't mean you're going to just walk upon the answers. You have to kind of find the answers for yourself. And so this might be really frustrating for people that are, I always forget what's like left brain and what's right brain, but I'm going to just say left brain people. I might be totally wrong about this, that are like much more analytical and much more, detailed. It's like, you guys might struggle more with this, where it's like you want just the answers and you want the clarity, and this isn't the space for that. Like, you might be asking the right questions and you might be looking in the right areas, but you're not going to find the answer. Like, you have to figure out the answer for yourself. And so I think on Thursday there is this kind of frustrating, like, I know what the right questions are, but what are these answers? There's some sort of block when it comes to communication. There's some sort of block when it comes to our ideas and thinking. And so you're just going to have to be patient. You're just going to have to trust the process. But luckily, as we go through the next few days, there's some opportunities to get more clarity here. So let's move forward. We get into Friday, and the moon is still in Gemini, and it's going to be making a square to Saturn. It's going to conjoin Mercury, and then it's going to sextile Venus and Mars. So the moon's doing quite a bit before we actually get into this new moon phase. But as the moon makes a square to Saturn on Friday morning, there is this kind of like it's like, all right, you don't get the answers. And then the moon's in Gemini. It's like, well, am I asking the right questions? Am I understanding it more? It's like, you need to like kind of vent out your feelings about things. And that moon squaring Saturn is like, you can vent all day long. Like, have you ever vented to someone and they just don't reciprocate it well enough? Or like you feel like they're withholding like their own experience or anything that they could share with you to help you? Like they're withholding that truth. I feel like that's the moon in Gemini squaring Saturn in Pisces, where it's like, you can't look for these external answers to things. Like, you're going to really have to, and this isn't a day of like, oh, you're just going to find the answers yourself on the inside. It's just a day of like seeing that blockage and like being forced to come to terms with like, I may not have all the answers right now. You're probably asking the right questions. You're probably thinking the right things, but you're just not going to see what that future looks like. It's like, again, Pisces is like the ultimate destination. And there's this sort of like, okay, like if you're going to, let's say you're going to walk across America. Let's say you're going to play Forrest Gump and you're going to run across America. You might not have started thinking that, or you may not have been you're not going to be the same person as when you start as when you finish. And I try to say that for like anybody starting a business or going into new ventures, like you're not going to end where you begin. And if you're trying to make up an idea of like, oh, this is how it's going to be when it's all done, like you're not going to get anywhere. But then the moon will conjoin Mercury after it makes that square to Saturn. And so there is this level of like, okay, like what do I understand now? What is the information that I have present with me now? And how can I just absorb all of that? Like, okay, I may not have all of the answers, but what info do I have? After the moon conjoins Mercury, it's going to sextile Venus and Mars. And this is like, all right, maybe I don't have all of the answers to the absolute truth of the universe right now, but the information that I do have, this is what I can do with it. It's going to be sextiling Venus and Mars, where it's like, well, I have enough to do this. I have enough to do that. With Mars and Venus and Leo, when we're talking about, being seen, being witnessed, being glorified, how do we want to be viewed? How do we want to be, and honestly, like a lot of it's like glorified. And, how do we want to have more confidence? How do we want to go about the world, with more confidence, with more, pride? And again, I try to balance out the pride understanding, because you don't want to just be like, well, I'm this, and so I'm, proud of who I am. Like, you don't want to be a jerk, right? But there is this, like, I look at it as you need the internal confidence to do the things that that you want to do. And I think I heard it yesterday that confidence is just like, all confidence really is your understanding of what your own capabilities are. And so if you lack confidence, you lack an experience and capability. And so let's say you lack confidence in, like, let's say you're a guy and you lack, and I'm just using, and most of my fucking audience is women. So there's a few of you out there that are guys, but like, if you lack confidence talking to a girl, well, you just lack that experience of that. If you talk to 10, 20, 30, 100 like women, like, and approach them, like, your confidence about that situation and how you handle it will go up because you're more experienced in that. You're going to understand what your abilities are. And so I think as the moon is in Gemini, it's making a sextile to Venus and Mars. This is like, what information do I have right now that can help my confidence, that can, help support what it is that I'm doing, what it is that I want to move forward with. And all it really is just understanding the situation. Like the moon in Gemini is like, okay, here's the information that I have. Can this help me, put a pep in my step here? And so Friday is going to feel frustrating because it's like, we're not going to get the hard black and white answers that we want. But what we do get, we're going to be able to use in supporting us when it comes to, again, having more confidence, being more courageous, being more bold, and stepping into whatever, like, again, I don't always like to use the very spiritual new age terms, but like, what type of life are you trying to step into? What type of life are you trying to grow into? Where do you really want to act confidently? Where do you really want to, take the reins of life and be like, you know what, this is me, and you're going to have to deal with it. I think as the moon is in Gemini, sextiling Mars and Venus, this is an excellent time to like put the pieces together and be like, well, based off this information, I know I can use this to support my goals in being more confident, being more courageous. So then we get to Saturday, and Saturday's a very big day. We have nothing but highlights. We have the new moon in Gemini, which will be squaring Neptune. We have Mercury making a sextile to Venus, and we're going to be having Saturn station retrograde. So let me see if I can talk about all of these as fast and as literate as possible. New moon in Gemini. I think I spoke about this in my last week's horoscope. I don't remember, but I know I spoke about it again in my June monthly overview. This new moon is very important, and it's for one reason. Mars stationed retrograde at the degree that this new moon is happening. So I want you to think about the Mars retrograde. This was pretty much October, November, December, January, February, March. That wasn't the whole retrograde period, but that was the whole time period that Mars was in Gemini of 2022 into 2023. Like I said, a lot of people went through a lot of turmoil during that time. This new moon is on the degree that Mars stationed retrograde. Mars stationing retrograde is like there's slowdowns here. There's not enough information here. What's going on here? There's a lot of just inner turmoil, not being able to move forward, not having the right information. Mars squared Neptune as it stationed retrograde. So there's just confusion of what are we doing? What are we moving forward with? And this new moon is now wrapping all of that up. Like I said before, Mars retrograded through Gemini and just left. He left a mess. And now Mercury's in Gemini being like, okay, well, what do I do with this area now? And this new moon is like, let's clean it up. Let's reset this area. What have we learned in the past? Gosh, like it's almost like a 3/4 of a year. And so as this new moon happens, I want you to think about the Mars retrograde. Think about like Halloween last year and think about like March of this year. And what were the two things that really shifted? And again, whatever sign Gemini rules for you, because now we get to come back to this area, and the Mars retrograde would have been like problems, fights, lack of motivation, lack of ambition. And this is more of like getting an emotional clarity around here, getting a lot of wisdom from this area and being like, this is how we're going to do it different. This is how we're going to clean this up and tackle this mess that Mars left. Very exciting. The problem is this new moon is squaring Neptune. So again, you're not going to, this is all, so many things with this Pisces stuff is you just have to play it by ear. Like Neptune is very, again, elusive, deceptive. Like I would argue trines and sextiles to Neptune are awesome for creativity and for like being very hopeful and romantic. Squares and oppositions to Neptune are like being catfished. And so this new moon squaring Neptune is like, it's not going to look, it didn't look the way that you anticipated. That Mars retrograde happened. Maybe it wasn't exactly what you expected. And now you're getting to this new moon, and based off the information that you have, you're like, maybe you were told false information. Maybe you weren't, given the full honest truth, or maybe you misunderstood things, but this is where it's at now. And this new moon squaring Neptune is kind of like, for one, it's a new moon, right? We want to reset things, and it's in Gemini. So it's like understanding, it's communication, it's relationships, because Gemini is a social sign, but it's squaring Neptune. Like, don't get too lost in the sauce. Don't get too idealistic about things. Don't, like, it's just one of those things where you got to do what you got to do. And if you're expecting it to be perfect, like, you're going to be disappointed. You want to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst type thing. And this isn't like, oh, the worst case scenario is going to happen, but it is one of those things of what information, like, for example, let's say you're going to a party and people tell you, oh, this party's going to be sick. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. And then you get there and it's not that. And it's like, but it is a party. That's kind of what's going on here. It's like, it's not exactly what expectations that you had, but the event is still going on. And so how do you reset and recalibrate based off the information that you're getting now? So like, try not to make expectations. Expectations are just premeditated judgments. Be open to what the opportunity is. Be open to what it looks like. And problem with Gemini and Pisces stuff is like, Gemini's like, I need the answers now. And Pisces is like, the answers will shift and change as time goes on. So there has to be kind of that, compromise in that middle point of, all right, well, these are the questions that I have, and maybe the answers will come along the way. So try not to stress about it. The second highlight that we have on Saturday is Mercury's going to make a sextile to Venus. Again, working with what we have, working with the information that we do have, Mercury sextiling Venus and Leo is hot. Like, if you wanted to flirt on this day, if you wanted to send some sexy messages, if you just wanted to be charming, like, Mercury and Gemini sextiling Venus and Leo is like, Saturday night, you go to a bar, you see a pretty lady, or ladies, you see a handsome fellow. This is going to be a great flirting day. This is a great being like, here's my number, or like, did you fall? Like, I can't think of anything sexy to say right now, but like, Mercury sextiling Venus is like, in my opinion, very like, I'm a Venus in Gemini, so I'm like, anything communicative, like that turns me on, but this is excellent for that kind of stuff, and like gassing people up and like, you're so attractive and you're so hot. But like, so it's a good day for that, but let's talk about it more on a personal development level and what you can do with it. Gas yourself up. Like, if you're feeling not confident, like, this is the day to be like, I'm fucking sexy, like I can do this, like, wow, look how fucking like great I am. And what's so fucked up about society right now is so many people are like way too confident in areas that they really shouldn't be confident in, and then there's other people like it's just like a false confidence, like they're just like narcissistic and lying to themselves, versus then there's people that are like so great at doing things and they just beat themselves up all day long. This is going to be a day for like the people that beat yourself up. This is going to be a day to be like, all right, like what story can I tell myself? What, internal dialogue can I have that's actually going to, like, for example, if you're about to go on stage, you don't tell yourself, oh, I'm ugly. Oh, I'm stupid. Oh, like, what if I look like shit? What if the lighting's weird? You got to be like, yo, like, I'm the shit. Like, there's no one better than me. And look, you're talking to a Leo here. Like, confidence is one of the best strengths that you could ever have. It doesn't matter what you do in life. It doesn't matter where you go. If you're not confident, no one's going to like you. You're not going to like yourself. And the reality is, not everyone is going to like you. Maybe no one likes you. But as long as you like yourself and you are happy and content with the decisions that you've made, and that you feel like you're listening to yourself and your path, that's all that matters. And I feel like Mercury and Gemini sextiling Venus and Leo is like, gas yourself up. Like, why would, like, I saw a meme and it was something along the lines of like, if everyone hates me, like, why would I hate myself? Like, why would you spend time hating yourself? You're all that you have. Like, this is a day to really let it click of like, you need to have a very strong internal dialogue. Don't be narcissistic and project it onto everyone and be like, no, I'm better than you, and I'm better than this, and I'm better than that. But like, you have to have a strong internal dialogue that is like, again, it comes from a place of integrity, comes from a place of confidence, comes from a place of security and love, not from a place of like ego, not from a place of like pride and arrogance. So this is what I want you to do on Saturday is, and again, for example, like if you want to hit on someone at the bar, or if you see someone in line and you want to be like, yo, like what them digits, what are those digits? You got to have, like, if you're like, hello, lady, you're very attractive and I'd like to have your number. Like, she's going to be like, go away, creep. But like, you can get, this is what's funny about like you can be a 6, but if you're funny, you're like a 10. Same thing, like that's like for guys, and especially if it's like for like women. Like, I've seen women that are like absolute 10s, but they're just, whether the way that they talk, or the way that they share information, or just like everything about them, like they'll start saying stuff and I'm like, you're like, like, as physically attractive as you are, it's like your mind and the way you think is not attractive. It turns me off. Versus like, you can have like a woman that's like a 6 or a 7 and they're like funny, intelligent, and smart, and like able to like, keep up with the pace, and it's like they'll turn into a 10. That's like the Mercury sextiling Venus is like, sometimes it takes a little bit of brain, sometimes it takes a little wit and comedic value. Again, if like you're like a guy and you're like a 5 or 6, you're funny, Girls are going to look at you. Same thing with like, you know, with girls, if you're like a 5 or a 6, it's like, if you're like smart, you're charming, you know how to like make funny jokes, same thing, like you will instantly be more attractive. And some of you are going to be like, that's very misogynistic or whatever. And it's just kind of like, that's just the truth though. You know what I mean? Like you can be a 10 all day long, but if you have no personality, you have no depth, like it's like, you're just this human. Like you're not like, it's just, you're just like, anyway, I'm going to stop digging myself into a hole. But then Saturn goes retrograde on Saturday. So again, a lot going on Saturday. Saturn has been direct in Pisces for a minute. Whoops. Saturn, retrograde, and the microphone flips over. Saturn has been in Pisces now for a minute. What that means is Saturn's about responsibility and restrictions and limitations, and it's now been in a new zodiac sign where we have been given new responsibilities. We've been given new restrictions and limitations to work with. And we've been maybe taking a little bit with stride, seeing of where the restriction's going to be. Saturn goes retrograde. The way I've analogized this to my clients is like, okay, if you start a new job, you're being trained on the job. That's Saturn going into a new sign, going direct. Like, you know, you got a trainer there, they're teaching you everything. Saturn going retrograde is like your first day on your own, where you're like, okay, wait, do I remember what this is? Wait, do I have to do this? And, you know, what do I do with this? Like, you run into all these situations, and it's like the hard work. Like, it's kind of like Saturn going retrograde is like, this is what I signed up for. And I wasn't really expecting it. It's funny, Saturn is my time lord, and it's in my 4th house of living situation, and I'm moving into a big house, and it's like, oh, this is what I'm going to sign up for. And I know I'm going to be fine. Like, I've got a good attitude about it. But that's where the weight of what responsibility you take on comes in. This is where like the hard work really comes in, and it's like, hey, this is what, like, Saturn being direct is like, here's all of the new information, and here's what you need to be responsible for. Here's where the restrictions are. Saturn going retrograde is like, now you got to deal with it later. So Saturn going retrograde, Saturday's a really big day. There's quite a bit going on here, and I really look at it as like a really pivotal shift, especially as we go into the rest of the summer, because the summer has a lot of transits going on. But then we move into Sunday. Sunday is when the moon will enter Cancer. Now that we're off of this new moon, it will then trine Saturn and sextile Jupiter. Moon in Cancer, the way our emotions are, the way that we're feeling, we're much more in tune with them. We're much more, connected to our emotions. We're wanting to feel, nourished. We're wanting to feel, we might have more empathy, or we want to seek out more empathy and more connection. As the moon makes a trine to Saturn, now that Saturn's retrograde and the moon makes that trine, it's like, I think this is an excellent opportunity to check in and be like, are my emotions aligned with, my duties? Like, am I taking this on with stride, and who do I have to be? Where do my emotions have to be to take on these new responsibilities and these new limitations? And I think it's just the moon's in Cancer. We're just feeling some type of way. We're much more in tune with it. It's a little bit emotional, but it's like, for example, with me in my life, like, I'm going into a house, and when I say a big house, it's really not that big. Don't think it's like that. But the moon in my, and the moon will be in my 8th, and it'll be trining Saturn. And there's this level of like, for me, like, I've dealt with, scarcity mindset and poverty for so long that for me, like, this house, I've been struggling with like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to pay my rent, or how am I going to do that? And I'm fine. Like, I'll totally be able to take care of myself, but those fears still come up. And I know that once I get in there and it's there and it's all kind of like hitting me all at once, it's like, I'm going to have to check in emotionally and be like, all right, like, how do I feel right now? And am I going to let the scarcity and the fear mindset overwhelm me? Or am I going to allow my emotions to change and be comfortable with this change? And maybe I will be a little bit sensitive. Maybe I will be like, hey, this is a lot for me, but I can't change the internal dialogue. Like, if I change the internal dialogue of like, oh my God, what if, and you just live in fear and fear and fear, like, I'm going to spiral out of control, and I won't be able to take, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think as the moon makes that trine to Saturn, right after Saturn goes retrograde, it's like, it's not that like you got this, but it's understanding, like, for example, it's like your first day on the job without any help. It's like, okay, well, I kind of know what I'm supposed to be doing, but now I'm on my own, and maybe I'm feeling a little bit more emotionally sensitive about making all of these decisions, but I know that I've got it if I just trust the process. If I just revert back to my education, I revert back to my training, I know I have this. It's just sensitive. Then the moon will sextile Jupiter after it trines Saturn. So there is this hope. Like, it's like trine Saturn, okay, I'm a little emotional, but I know I got this. And then it sextiles Jupiter, where it's like, I can feel comfortable. Like I can feel stable. Like this feels good. Jupiter's all about growth and optimism and abundance, and it's in Taurus, and it's in like the sign of security and stability and value, and the moon in Cancer is like, it feels good to have this. Like my living situation, like I haven't really talked about it because I try to be much more like, I like to share my stuff, but I have to have like a boundary at some point, right? And my living situation, as fucking grateful and as grateful as I was for it, it was not conducive to my lifestyle. I gained a lot of weight because of that place. Like the kitchen was always thrashed. I had roommates that were very disrespectful to me and my beliefs and the way that I wanted to do things. And I just didn't let, like, it got the best of me. And so I think as this moon is sextiling Jupiter, it's like, I can't wait to be like, I'm back in control. Like I have my own place. I can finally go back to my diet that I was on. Like I literally transformed my life and my body over end of over 2021 and beginning of 2022. Then I moved into this place, and there was expectations that were set. There was promises that were not kept, and it forced me to like kind of, I don't want to say spiral, but like it just, like I'm trying to share without oversharing here, but long story short, it was not the safest place. It was not the best place. I trusted a friend that I probably shouldn't have trusted, and I received a lot of negative consequences about that. And maybe I could have taken more responsibility and not worried about, but just the kitchen was so dirty, and I just like, as a grunt, like I'm just anal about things being clean. So that really bothered me. I'm saying all of this to say, before I just start fucking venting here, I'm saying all this to say, like, moon sextiling Jupiter, there is this like, this feels good. This feels safe. You are okay. It's Taurus and Cancer. Like Taurus and Cancer is like eating a charcuterie board in a pool by yourself. You're going to feel good. You're going to feel safe and say, this feels excellent. This feels luxurious. I feel comfortable. I feel nourished. I feel safe. Then on Sunday, the sun will square Neptune. The sun square Neptune is also a highlight, but it is and it isn't. And I just think as the sun is our willpower, right? Our vitality, what are we being like energized by? It's a Gemini. So new ideas, sharing information. We're in a season of change, and it squares Neptune, and the sun is like pointing a light on something, right? But like, I want you to think about lighting. If you don't know anything about cinema, like I've had to learn, like for example, this lighting that I have right now is not the best lighting for like my YouTube setup. Like I've got this yellow light right here. I've got the daylight coming in. It's mixed lighting. But if you watch my other videos when I have really good lighting, like it makes me look completely different. Like depending on how the lighting is how, like, for ladies know this when it comes, like especially like Instagram models, they know about lighting, because if you could be a 10 out of 10, but with the wrong lighting, you can look like a uggo. With the right lighting, even if you're an uggo, you can look awesome. It's all about lighting. And I look at that sun square Neptune as the light that you are shining upon the information that you have is not correct. Like for example, if you're doing lighting, you don't want to have the sun. You don't want to have the sun. You don't have the light straight on you. You want a 45-degree angle to cast a little bit of shadow over your nose, to cast a little bit of shadow over your eye. It creates this depth. It's very interesting and unique. And maybe we want that type of lighting. But the sun squaring Neptune is like this 90-degree angle lighting where it's like this part of your face is all lit up, this part of your face is dark. That's so Gemini, like Two-Face too, where it's like you're only seeing one side of the picture. And when you watch a movie or you watch a video and the lighting's like if you have the lighting at a 90-degree angle, it makes it really intense. Like it's like MMA fighter interview of like, yeah, I'm gonna beat his ass and this and this and that. Like it's very intense. And I think about that sun squaring Neptune is like, is that the lighting that you want on this situation? Like, for example, if I shot my astrology videos with that 90-degree angle lighting, that'd be like way too intense. Like it'd be not suitable for the emotion that I'm trying to convey. I would look at Sunday as, where are you shining the light, and how is that giving you feedback on the information? Like, again, if I have this 90-degree angle light and I'm trying to make a happy environment, but I'm getting this light, the lighting that I have is making it very dark and intense. It's like, well, then you might have a dark and intense reaction to something that you might want to have lighter. So really adjust your lighting on Sunday of like, where are you putting the light? And do you just need to change the angle of it? You could have the light for, like, again, It's all about perspective. Like, if you're looking at a situation one way, you could still look at that same situation, but through a different perspective, and it's going to give you a whole new view on it. That's how I want you to look at Sunday. And I think just Sunday is just realizing I may have the wrong lighting. I may have the wrong, not necessarily just perspective, but the wrong angle on this at this moment. So that's this week. Let's talk about next week. Jupiter's going to sextile Saturn. I said that was going to happen this week last week. It's not. I'm sorry, I lied. It's actually happening like first thing next week. Venus enters shadow next week. Big deal. That's really fun. Jupiter and Saturn sextiling is a big deal. Venus going into shadow is a big deal. We have the summer solstice. The sun enters Cancer. Hallelujah. Mercury's going to sextile Mars. That's fun. And then Mercury's going to square Neptune. That's not as fun. But that's what I got for you guys. I don't have any final thoughts this week. My final thoughts are I cannot wait to get out of this hotel. I've been here for 2 weeks. I'm losing it. And I'm very excited to be in my new place. And we have a lot of awesome things coming up here in the future on this channel. So again, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already to keep up to date with everything. Like this video. Let me know what you're excited for. Let me know what you're not excited for in the comments below. I'll be seeing you guys next week.